Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters. And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E. Cup, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. It's Wednesday, October 8th. There are only 27 days until this all-important New York City mayor's race, so it's right around the corner. Later in today's show, we're going to speak with one of Zohran Mamdani's fellow assembly members, who's also running for city council and hoping they both make it to City Hall. But first, as always, let's get to some news. Joining me now is Chris Sommerfeldt, senior City Hall reporter for the New York Daily News. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, let's talk about where the candidates were today, this morning. Crane's New York Business held a mayoral forum focused on the city's economic future. What did you learn from it?
You know, one of the highlights there was an actual substantive policy announcement from former Governor Andrew Cuomo. He said he would, as mayor, try to scrap the city's longstanding plan to close Rikers Island, the infamous jail complex. And as opposed to closing it and replacing it with borough-based jail, as was decided by the city council in 2019, he wants to keep the island and improve the jails there. This has already drawn quite a bit of controversy. His main opponent, Zohran Mamdani, calls it a horrific proposal and that Rikers needs to be closed. Other than that, the Cranes Forum contains some kind of awkward moments for Zohran Mamdani. Keep in mind the kind of the forum that's in. It's an audience of business leaders who have been quite skeptical of Mr. Mamdani's taxation agenda of increasing taxes on millionaires and corporations. So to kind of attempt to bring some levity to it, he started out by mentioning to them that I think a lot of people in this room maybe wouldn't see me as their favorite mayor. And that drew some laughs. And then he kind of tried to assuage some concerns that they have about his youth and inexperience. But I think,
how do you think he did trying to assuage some concerns? How do you think that went over in that room of business leaders, business reporters, the business community?
I think the main part that he tried to impress on them is that he's not the only person who's going to be running things at City Hall if he is elected. He mentioned that he's going to be appointing people based on competence, not ideology. As you know, and as your listeners know, Mr. Mamdani is a democratic socialist, and a lot of people in the business communities have concerns about that. Mr. Mamdani even went as far as to say that he's going to consider officials in Eric Adams's administration to potentially bring on board in his own administration. And I think that's an attempt by him to bridge some of those gaps that he has with that community.
Yeah, that's sort of an Obama era kind of thing to say. That's interesting. News from the Campaign Finance Board today about the upcoming debates. Viewers, listeners of this show know I'm very excited for those debates. I think we're going to learn a lot from those debates. I think they're going to be really important. Who made the stage and who didn't?
Well, the three main candidates made it. So, we're going to see Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee. We're going to see Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, and Andrew Cuomo, the independent candidate in the race. The other kind of low polling candidates that many of your listeners might not even have heard about are not going to be up there. But this will be on the 16th.
Well, they have, Chris,
the first
because
time.
we had them on. Our viewers have met Joseph Hernandez. I'm taking it he did not make it.
He did not make it, and I'm sure Joseph is upset about that and will at least call it out in public. I don't really know if he has any recourse to try to get on that stage. It's all based on fundraising numbers, on polling numbers.
Polls.
So it's the thresholds are pretty high to make it onto that stage.
I remember we had him on maybe last week, and he was saying if he didn't make the stage, he might sue. So we'll follow up with him on that. But we know that the three main candidates will be there. That's good to know. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of the horrific October 7th attack by Hamas, killing some 1,200 innocent people, kidnapping hundreds more. Frontrunners around Mamdani released a statement. It drew significant backlash from predictable places and unpredictable places, from the left and the right. I'm wondering how you think this will go over among New York City's Jewish voters.
I think this is an issue that, as you just mentioned, Zohran Mamdani has had to kind of tangle with a little bit throughout the campaign. As you know, he's very outspoken in his pro-Palestinian views, and most of that statement yesterday focused not on the atrocities of October 7th, but what he sees as the atrocities that have ensued since then by the Israeli military killing tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza. I will say, if you look at the polling, most New York City voters at this point are quite critical of Israel and are more inclined to look towards issues such as the ones that Mamdani has been centering his campaign around: affordability, trying to make the city more affordable for working class New Yorkers. And I think that's in part why Mamdani feels comfortable issuing a statement like that yesterday.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it elicited a response from Israel as well as some national politicians. So these are important tests for him, as he's trying to persuade voters. He's up for the job. We'll see if there's an impact. Okay, Chris, stay right there because I've got a few more questions for you after the break. Battleground NYC, we'll be right back.
And for all of the focus on the economic relief and the public safety relief, what we sometimes miss are the larger economic benefits to productivity if we were to have buses that were fast and free.
The cost is too high to live, affordability, the cost of rent. Give them a tax holiday on their income tax, which we can control a small bit of that.
The writing is on the wall. It promises to be New York City's big ditch. It is already years late, billions over budget, and obsolete.
We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. Let's get some more news from the campaign trail with Chris Sommerfeldt, senior City Hall reporter, New York Daily News. So, Chris, we're awaiting new polls. I've been dying to see new polls since Eric Adams dropped out. But can you get a sense of whether or not Adams dropping out helped Andrew Cuomo in the way that Andrew Cuomo says it would and did?
We haven't seen any major polls yet come out since Eric Adams dropped out. There is one poll that came out that was just surveying Latino voters in New York City. This was conducted by the Hispanic Federation. That showed that the race with Eric Adams in or out is basically staying the same. The dynamic's the same. You have Mamdani polling about 48%, Cuomo at 24%, Curtis Lewa at something around like 13%, which honestly is around the same that we had with Adams in the race. So, of course, with the caveat that that's only Hispanic voters, it doesn't appear to be moving that much. It will be interesting to see, though, once one of the bigger polls actually released their results.
Oh, yeah, I'm dying to get a new poll. Cuomo's pollster, Cornell Belcher, told the New York Times, we definitely have an avenue here. With Eric dropping out, we can compress the vote and we can compress the Republican vote, even with Curtis in it. Is he right? Is there a pathway for Cuomo, even if Sliwa stays in, or is that sort of campaign wish casting?
Polls can be wrong, as we saw during the primary. So I wouldn't lean too heavily on what any specific polls say. Can Andrew Cuomo benefit from Eric Adams dropping out of the race? Absolutely. I think there's at least some of Eric Adams' supporters who will turn to Andrew Cuomo. They share a similar moderate style of politics. They appeal to kind of the same outer borough working class voters. I think he can definitely benefit. Is it going to be enough to cut into Mamdani's lead? It's a tough sell. It's possible.
Speaking of Adams, he may be out of the race, but he's still weighing in. He's got a new op-ed in AM New York where he touts his accomplishments, including, quote, 7 straight quarters of crime reduction. And he says those who come after must make sure we don't go backwards and instead continue the progress we've made to make our city and streets safer. Can he be an influential voice in the 27 days that are left in this race when he was performing so badly he had to drop out? I mean, I don't know how
It's a
to put
good
it.
question. I don't really know how much influence he can have given how unpopular he is among New Yorkers. I do
Yeah.
think the one thing that's outstanding from Eric Adams is an endorsement in the mayoral race, right?
Right.
There were some indications when he dropped out that he might maybe endorse Andrew Cuomo. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly know that Andrew Cuomo wants that to be able to
Mm-hmm.
attract as many Eric Adams supporters as he can. Eric Adams has so far held off on that.
Yeah.
Time will tell
Yeah.
if he's going to change that. Of course, it's awkward for Eric Adams, though. Just a few weeks ago, he called Andrew Cuomo a snake and a liar.
Right.
So is
Right.
he now going to go from calling him a snake and a liar to endorsing him for the
Oh,
position he
listen,
currently holds?
stranger things have happened.
Certainly. Yeah.
You know how this can go. I could tick down the list of once enemies turned allies, but I take your point. Curtis Lewa, we mentioned him. He got an endorsement yesterday from um, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Now, he was my mayor at one point. He does not enjoy the same support among New York voters as he once did many years ago. But is this an important endorsement for someone like Curtis Lewa?
I think among conservative voters in New York City, it's absolutely an important endorsement. The problem is there's not a lot of registered Republican conservative voters in New York City.
Right.
I think it
Right.
allows Sliwa to kind of consolidate that base, which
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo has tried to appeal to a little bit as well. So it hurts as a backstop against Cuomo, I think.
Yeah, you don't have to answer this. I'm also just wondering because Rudy Giuliani is sort of a Trump proxy. Is that sort of almost like a MAGA imprimatur? Not that there are a lot of MAGA voters in New York. I take your point, but there are Republicans in Staten Island,
Sure.
and there are Republicans who are with Curtis Lewa. I'll just remind everyone he polled better than Eric Adams. He was doing better than Eric Adams. So I just think it'll be interesting. Lastly, before I let you go, report in the Free Press saying some New York cops are saying they're going to quit if Mamdani is elected. Have you heard anything like that?
I have not heard that specifically. I will say, though, there's a lot of anxiety in Zohran Mamdani's camp, I think, about how he's going to be able to manage a police department, knowing that there's a lot of police officers who do not like his previous statements about the department. Mamdani is trying to find a police commissioner, I think, who could kind of serve as his intermediary there and foster some better ties. He's talked about keeping
Like a
on
Sherpa.
Jessica
Yeah.
Tisch. We'll see what happens with that.
Well, Chris Sommerfeldt, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate your reporting as always.
Thank you.
Okay, and when we come back, we'll talk with one of Mamdani's former colleagues in the New York State Assembly who very much hopes to follow him to City Hall. Don't go anywhere. More Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me now for the bigger picture is Harvey Epstein, currently an assembly member representing the 74th District, the east side of Manhattan, who's now running for New York City Council. Assembly member Epstein, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, so I want to ask you about your race for City Council in a minute. But first, I got to get you to talk about this race because someone you know pretty well is the front runner, Zohran Mamdani. You are currently assemblymen together. What is it like to work with him in Albany?
Yeah, him and I have a great relationship. We've worked together on numerous bills over the years. We've talked a lot about how we improve the lives of regular New Yorkers, talk about income inequality and racial and economic justice. And we've passed a lot of legislation in Albany that I've worked on, he's worked on to advance those values together.
Good. Okay, so question one is, did you have any sense, did he talk about running for higher office over the past 4 years? Did you know this was something he had aspirations to do?
I found out about him running for mayor right about the same time everyone else did. He came to probably a meeting we were having. He's like, I'm really considering about jumping into this race, and I was surprised because it's a big step, but he has proven that
It's a big step. Yeah.
He's got the skills and ability to run a strong campaign, and what happened in June really was transformative for the mayoral race.
He has the skills and ability to run a strong campaign. Check. Obvious. Does he have the skills and ability to run the city of New York?
Yeah, so those are questions like anyone who jumps into. I don't think anyone who's ever been mayor had a job where they had 200,000
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
I would argue the same thing with Governor Hochul. She didn't have the experience before that. Even Governor Cuomo. Like you have to
Yeah.
grow
There's
into those
nothing like it.
fields. There's nothing like it to
Yeah.
run a city with 8.5 million people, larger than most states in our country, larger than lots of nations on our planet, where you're running it to
Yeah.
to advance our values. So does he have the skills and ability? I think he does, but yeah, I think it's a test of time will show. He'll hopefully hire really smart people to do
Hmm.
really good work to advance what he said. Talking about free buses and rent frees and making sure that we have affordable childcare and after school programs. Those are basic needs that we see every day in New York. We all know we have an affordable housing crisis. I see it every day. We all see it every day. My kids
Hmm.
are now 20 and 26. They can't afford to live in the neighborhood where they were born and raised because there's no place to live. So that
Yeah.
crisis needs to be dealt with and it requires someone to do that. I hope, based on my relationship with him, and I know based on what he's saying, that he's committed to doing it. I hope we can build the number of units we need to alleviate the housing pressure, to deal with this housing crisis, to deal with the childcare crisis and affordability
Hmm.
crisis we see every day in New York.
I'm wondering if you think, because I know you've endorsed him, do you have any concerns about his ability to get these policy proposals over the line, having worked in Albany, knowing how much he'll need to rely on Albany to pass a lot of his agenda? Does he have infrastructure in place to do that? Do you think he'll have the will of the legislature? Do you think he'll get the help he needs? Or
Right.
is some of this probably just a little pie in the sky?
Well, I would say, this for the last 8 years I've been in Albany, every year we passed a one-house budget that included a tax increase for high-income earners. Both the Senate and the Assemblies had that in our budgets. My expectations is that we have a majority leader and a speaker in Albany would love to allow New York City to increase taxes on high-income earners. He's going to have to figure out if he can get that done. The other issues about the free buses, we're going to have to get the MTA on board. I'm really
Hmm.
optimistic. We did, a free bus pilot, wildly popular, one line per borough. That was, we saw bus ridership go up. We saw our
Hmm.
speed of buses improve. So it's like a win-win, especially in a city where we see 30 to 40% of people not paying their fares now. To actually save the resources on the enforcement, it can really bring a lot of more money and a lot more people to our public transportation system. So I think the arguments are there, and I think the interest is there, and I think he should have strong enough people around him, based on my relationship with him, to get those issues over the top.
Okay, you know that his candidacy has sparked national interest and debate, and some are worried he'll be bad for New York City. Um, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, in an interview yesterday, said that he was worried Mamdani policies will spook Wall Street, and that will negatively impact neighboring Connecticut. That's coming from a Democrat. Is he right to be worried about some of those policies spooking one of New York City's biggest, most important industries for the country?
Yeah, I'll say quickly that I've talked to people in the financial sector. I've talked to business leaders, and they are concerned about making sure New York's a livable place. If they know their resources are going to the right places to ensure that they have a workforce in New York who can live and work in New York,
Mm.
I think they're excited to do it. No one wants to pay more taxes just to pay taxes, but they want to do things to improve the lives of New Yorkers, and I know business leaders support that issue as well.
Okay, Harvey, don't go anywhere because I've got more questions for you about your own race after the break. More Battleground NYC after this. We're back with NYC, Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. One more time with Harvey Epstein, assembly member representing the 74th District. He's running for New York City Council to represent District 2. Harvey, tell me about your race. Why are you running for City Council?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. So this is my 8th year up in Albany and as an assembly member. And over those years, we passed a lot of really important, meaningful legislation about dealing with the housing crisis, mental health, public safety.
Mm.
But sometimes when you pass a law, you want to make sure it has that local impact. We see the housing being built in our communities and the dealing with mental health crisis. And one issue really stood out to me about a year and a half ago. There was a gentleman who was, arrested in my community, had serious mental health issues for decades in New York City. He went to Rikers Island, spent 9 months on a mental health ward in Rikers. The law that we required discharge planning by the city. the discharge planning that they did at Rikers Island was to take him from the mental health ward at Rikers to tell him he could go to a homeless shelter, 800 men's bed shelter, and then he was supposed to see a therapist twice a month. Within a month of leaving Rikers Island, within a week of missing his therapy appointment, he stabbed and killed 3 New Yorkers. We need discharge plans that work. We need a system that works that makes us all feel safe and protected. And I have the skills and experience to actually make that happen.
You ran against someone we've mentioned begrudgingly on this show before, because I had to cover several of his endeavors. Anthony Weiner, he lost. You beat him handily to win the nomination, but he was trying to paint you as too far left. Do you consider yourself a moderate for folks that don't know you? Do you consider yourself progressive? Are you a democratic socialist like Mamdani? Where do you fall?
Yeah, I call myself a practical progressive. I'm not a
Okay.
DSAer. I don't consider myself a moderate. I gave myself someone who believes that we need to deal with the issues of inequality in our society, but we need to be practical about how we do things, and that sometimes we need to make modicum changes because people sometimes can't change overnight. I see it with my mother,
Yeah.
who's I love her, 86 years old, and you ask her to make changes. It's hard to do that. It's hard to do that for
Yeah.
me. And so we want to make sure that we are easing people into those changes. So sometimes if we take a big swing that makes a huge change, we see some pushback. So you need to be practical about what you can do to move people. We are not the same country or people as we were 100 years ago, but you can't expect it to happen overnight. And that's why I think being practical about those changes are really important.
I think that's it's a really good point, and it's refreshing to hear someone talk about things like that and having some understanding of where voters of every generation and demographic are on all of these issues. Explain for people who don't understand the complexities of New York City how City Council and the mayor, and maybe that will mean you and Mamdani, will need to work together to get everything done. How interactive are those two entities?
Yeah, so like any legislative body and an executive body, you really need to collaborate, like the governor does with the assembly and the Senate, like Congress
Yeah.
should be doing with the president. I mean, those are bodies that have a really important balance. The legislative body passes laws. The executive makes sure that they effectuate it. You have to work together. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to have a council that works with the mayor to advance our shared values and our shared vision.
Do you think you'll have a council that will work with Zoran Mamdani if he does win?
It's my expectation that we'll have a council that will work with the mayor. And my expectation is Zoran will be the next mayor of New York City. So we're going to have to advance what he wants because he's the mayor, we're the council, we're going to have to work together. We're not going to have to agree on everything. No one does. But there are going to be things that are important to the council. There'll be things that are important to the mayor. And we're going to all have to come to the table to make it work.
You talked a little bit about public safety and mental health. Rapes and felony assaults in New York City are up. That's despite a drop in other kinds of crime. What will you do to make the city safer for commuters like me? I'm a woman who comes into the city sometimes very early in the morning, sometimes very late at night. For the homeless, for residents, what's your plan for safety?
Yeah, so we have a supportive housing crisis. We do not build enough beds of supportive housing. We have people with serious mental health issues living on our streets
Yep.
every day. It just makes it unsafe for all of us. Makes it unsafe for
Yeah.
them. The,
Yeah.
the gentleman I just mentioned earlier, he shouldn't have been on our streets. He shouldn't have been in an 800 men bed shelter. He should have had an apartment with a door, with a social worker, with a case manager. That's a system we need. We need to ensure that our police are doing the response to the issues they need to respond to. If there's a domestic violence issue, a police officer who's not trained in domestic violence is not the person who should be the first responder. If someone's decompensating on the street, it shouldn't be someone who doesn't have training for that. We need to make sure our response systems are in line with what we need to do. Those are the changes we need to do to make sure you're safe and I'm safe, so my wife and my children feel safe walking around the city like everyone else.
Well, thanks so much, Harvey Epstein, for joining us today, for breaking down sort of the Mamdani effect and also talking to us about your race and the issues that are important to you as a New Yorker. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for covering these really important issues.
Great to have you. And that's it for us, but we'll be back tomorrow and every Monday through Friday with more news and context from the campaign trail. That's it for Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote.